The rain was coming down hard that Tuesday evening, making the old neon sign of Danny's Diner flicker even more than usual. Lisa wiped down the same counter for the third time, watching the water stream down the windows and hoping her shift would end without any drama. She had been working at this little diner in downtown Portland for almost 3 years now, and she knew every regular customer by name, every booth that wobbled, and exactly which coffee machine would give her trouble on days like this. At 34, Lisa had never imagined she would still be here, refilling coffee cups and taking orders for burgers and fries. Life had a funny way of changing your plans. Her father's cancer treatment had eaten up their family savings, and now with her mother needing daily care, Lisa couldn't afford to chase the dreams she once had. But she didn't complain much. The work was honest, and the tips helped pay the bills. The dinner rush was just starting to slow down when she heard the bell above the door chime. Lisa looked up from wiping tables and saw something unusual. 3 men in expensive suits were shaking the rain off their umbrellas and looking around the diner like they had stepped into a different world. And they kind of had. Danny's Diner wasn't the kind of place that attracted wealthy customers. The vinyl seats had been patched with duct tape, the floor tiles were cracked in places, and the whole building probably hadn't been updated since the 1980s. But the food was good, the prices were fair, and it was the kind of place where working people could afford to bring their families for dinner. The 3 men stood near the entrance for a moment, clearly out of place in their tailored suits and shiny shoes. Lisa grabbed some menus and walked over to greet them, putting on her best customer service smile. "Good evening, gentlemen. Table for 3? The man in the middle, who seemed to be the leader of the group, nodded politely. "Yes, please. Somewhere. Quiet if you have it." Lisa noticed his voice was calm and measured, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't quite place. She led them to a corner booth away from the other customers, the one by the window that usually stayed empty during the week. "Can I start you off with some coffee?" she asked, setting down the menus. "Coffee would be great," the main guy said. His 2 companions nodded in agreement. As Lisa walked back to get the coffee pot, she couldn't help but wonder what these men were doing in a place like Danny's. They looked like the kind of people who usually ate at fancy restaurants downtown, not little diners where the biggest decision was whether to get regular or sweet potato fries with your burger. She returned with 3 cups and the coffee pot, trying to listen in on their conversation without being obvious about it. They were talking about buildings and development projects, throwing around numbers that made her head spin. Something about permits and zoning laws and investors from overseas. The man who had spoken to her earlier was doing most of the talking. As Lisa poured his coffee, she noticed he had nice hands, clean and well kept. But there was something else. He stirred his coffee in a very specific way, counterclockwise, 3 times exactly. It was such an odd little habit that it caught her attention. "We'll need to review all the environmental reports before we make any final decisions," he was saying to his colleagues. "I don't want any surprises down the road." Lisa finished pouring and was about to leave when she noticed something else. The man was tapping his fingers on the table in a rhythm while he talked. Not random tapping, but a specific pattern. Tap, tap, pause, tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. Over and over. She had seen someone do that exact same thing before a long time ago. But where? "Miss." The man was looking up at her. "Could we also get some menus for the food?" "Oh, sorry." Lisa felt her cheeks get warm. "I already gave you menus, but let me grab some fresh ones." As she hurried away, she felt embarrassed for staring, but that finger-tapping thing was really bugging her. It was so familiar, like a song you can't quite remember but keeps playing in your head. She brought them new menus and took their orders. The main guy asked for apple pie and more coffee, simple enough. While she was writing it down, she got a better look at his face. He was probably around her age, maybe a little younger. Asian features, kind eyes, and there above his left eyebrow was a small scar, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. That's when her heart almost stopped. Lisa managed to finish taking their orders and make it back to the kitchen before her hands started shaking. She leaned against the prep counter, trying to catch her breath. It couldn't be. There was no way. But that scar, the finger tapping, the way he stirred his coffee. She knew someone who did all those things exactly the same way, someone from a very long time ago. For the next hour, Lisa found excuses to walk past their table. She refilled their coffee 3 times, brought extra napkins, and even wiped down tables that were already clean, all so she could get another look at the man with the familiar mannerisms. The more she watched, the more convinced she became. The way he tilted his head when he was thinking hard about something, how he always said thank you when she refilled his coffee, even though he was deep in conversation. The crooked smile he gave her when she apologized for interrupting their business talk. It was all exactly the same. But how could it be? The boy she remembered had lived in the same rundown neighborhood she did. His family didn't have money for nice clothes or fancy restaurants. They had been best friends from 2nd grade until 7th grade when his family moved away suddenly. They had promised to stay in touch, but you know how it is when you're kids. Life gets in the way. Tommy Chen. That was his name. Little Tommy, who used to help her with math homework in the public library because both their houses were too loud and crazy to study in. Tommy, who stood up to bullies even though he was smaller than most of the other kids. Tommy, who dreamed of becoming rich enough to help people who needed it. But this couldn't be Tommy. This was a wealthy businessman in an expensive suit, talking about million-dollar development deals. Tommy's family could barely afford groceries when she knew him. Lisa tried to focus on her other customers, but she kept glancing over at the corner booth. The 3 men were finishing up their meeting, gathering papers and checking their phones. Soon they would leave, and she would never know for sure. She made up her mind. Even if she was wrong, even if she made a fool of herself, she had to know. Some chances only come once in a lifetime. The other customers in the diner were finishing their meals and getting ready to leave. The evening crowd was thinning out, and Lisa's shift was almost over. If she was going to do this, it had to be now. Taking a deep breath, she walked over to the corner booth where the 3 men were putting on their coats. Her heart was beating so fast she was sure they could hear it. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The main guy looked up at her with those same kind eyes she remembered from 30 years ago. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I have to ask you something. This might sound completely crazy, but are you Tommy Chen from Riverside Elementary School?" The man stopped putting on his coat and looked at Lisa like she had just spoken in a foreign language. His 2 business partners paused their conversation and stared at her too. For a moment, the whole diner seemed to go quiet except for the sound of rain still hitting the windows. Lisa felt her face get hot. This was a mistake, a huge, embarrassing mistake. She was about to apologize and walk away when something incredible happened. The man's expression changed completely. His eyes went wide, and his mouth opened slightly like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. He looked at her face more carefully, really studying her features. Then, slowly, that crooked smile she remembered from childhood spread across his face. "Oh my God," he whispered, and his voice cracked a little. "Lisa Martinez?" Now it was Lisa's turn to be shocked. She nodded, not trusting her voice to work properly. "It really is you," he said, standing up so fast that he bumped the table and made the coffee cups rattle. "I can't believe it, Lisa." Before she knew what was happening, he had walked around the table and pulled her into a hug. Not a polite, businesslike hug, but the kind of hug you give someone you thought you'd never see again. Lisa found herself hugging him back, and suddenly she was 12 years old again, saying goodbye to her best friend. The other customers in the diner were definitely staring now. Some of them had their phones out, probably wondering why this fancy businessman was hugging their waitress like they were family. His 2 colleagues looked completely confused, like they had no idea what was happening. "Tommy," Lisa said, pulling back to look at him. "I knew it was you. I just knew it." "How?" he asked, shaking his head in amazement. "How did you recognize me? It's been what, 30 years?" The coffee stirring, Lisa laughed, wiping her eyes. "You still do it the same way, 3 times counterclockwise, and that finger-tapping thing you do when you're thinking. Plus the scar." She pointed to his eyebrow. "You got that when Bobby Richardson pushed you off the monkey bars in 3rd grade." "Tommy," reached up and touched the scar, grinning. I can't believe you remember that. Are you kidding? I remember everything. You were my best friend. One of his business partners cleared his throat. Tom, we really should get going. The car is waiting. And your flight to Seattle? Cancel it, Tommy said without looking away from Lisa. Cancel it? The man looked shocked. But the board meeting tomorrow morning. Move it to Thursday. Cancel the flight, cancel everything. I'm staying in Portland tonight. Tommy finally turned to look at his colleagues. Guys, I want you to meet someone very special. This is Lisa, my best friend from when we were kids. The two men introduced themselves politely, but Lisa could tell they thought their boss had lost his mind. She didn't blame them. If she had been watching this scene from outside, she would have thought it was pretty crazy too. Lisa, these are my business partners, David and Robert. We've been working together for about 8 years now. Tommy gestured to his friends. And Lisa, well, Lisa knew me back when I was just a skinny kid who got picked on at school. You weren't that skinny, Lisa said, and you never let anyone pick on me. Because you were worth protecting, Tommy said simply, and the way he said, it made Lisa's eyes water again. David and Robert exchanged glances and gathered up their papers. We'll head back to the hotel and reschedule everything, David said. Tom, call us when you're ready to discuss the Portland project. After they left, Tommy and Lisa stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. The diner was almost empty now, except for old Mr. Peterson, who came in every Tuesday for pie and coffee, and he was minding his own business in the front booth. Sit down, Lisa said, gesturing to the table. Let me get us some fresh coffee and we can talk. She brought over a new pot of coffee and sat across from him in the booth. It felt surreal, like she was living in a dream. This morning she had been worried about paying her electricity bill, and now she was having coffee with her childhood best friend, who had apparently become some kind of important businessman. So, she said, pouring coffee for both of them. Tommy, Chen, look at you in your fancy suit. He laughed and loosened his tie. Yeah, things changed a bit since Riverside Elementary. A bit? Tommy, your friends were talking about million-dollar deals out there. What happened to you? I mean, in a good way. Your family moved away so suddenly, and then I never heard from you again. Tommy's smile faded a little. My dad got a job offer in California. Good money, but we had to leave right away. I wanted to write to you, Lisa, I really did. But we moved 3 more times in 2 years, and I was just a kid. I didn't know how to find you. I tried to look you up a few times over the years, Lisa admitted. But Chen is a pretty common name, and I didn't know where you ended up. I'm sorry, he said. I should have tried harder to stay in touch. We were 12, Tommy. Don't apologize for being 12. He smiled at that. What about you? Tell me everything. Are you married? Kids? Lisa shook her head. No husband, no kids. I was engaged once, about 10 years ago, but it didn't work out. She didn't mention that her fiancé had left when her dad got sick and she couldn't pay attention to anything except medical bills and doctor appointments. What about you? Divorced, Tommy said. No kids either. My ex-wife said I worked too much. He paused. She was probably right. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, drinking their coffee. Lisa still couldn't quite believe this was happening. So what do you do? She asked. I mean, obviously something that involves a lot of money and business suits. Tommy grinned. I started a tech company about 15 years ago. We make software for hospitals and medical centers. It took off bigger than I ever expected. That's amazing, Tommy. Remember how we used to talk about what we wanted to be when we grew up? You always said you wanted to help people and make enough money so your parents wouldn't have to worry anymore. You remember that? I remember everything about our friendship. Do you remember what I wanted to be? Tommy thought for a moment, then his face lit up. A nurse. You wanted to be a nurse because your grandmother was in the hospital a lot and you said the nurses were the only people who made her smile. Lisa felt her heart skip. He really did remember. I got accepted to nursing school when I was 22, she said quietly. But then my dad got cancer and someone had to take care of him and help my mom. The medical bills were so high and I couldn't afford school and everything else. Lisa, Tommy said, and his voice was soft. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. I made the right choice. Family comes first, you know? Dad lived 4 more years than the doctors thought he would. I got to spend that time with him. He passed away 2 years ago. Mom's still alive, but she needs a lot of care now. That's why I'm still here, working at the diner. Lisa shrugged. It's not the life I planned, but it's my life. Tommy was quiet for a long time, just looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked. You're exactly the same person you were when we were kids, he said. Still putting everyone else first. Still the strongest person I know. Lisa felt tears coming again. I'm not strong, Tommy. I'm just doing what I have to do. That's what makes you strong, he said. The diner was almost empty now. Old Mr. Peterson had finished his pie and left, waving goodbye to Lisa like he did every Tuesday. The cook had gone home, and even the dishwasher had clocked out for the night. It was just Lisa and Tommy, sitting in that corner booth with cold coffee and 30 years of catching up to do. Do you remember Mrs. Rodriguez? Lisa asked, smiling at a memory that had just popped into her head. Tommy laughed out loud. Our 3rd grade teacher? The one who used to make us write sentences on the board when we talked too much? That's the one. Remember the time she caught us passing notes about how boring her math lessons were? Oh man, yes. She made us write, I will pay attention in math classes 500 times each. My hand was cramped for a week. But you helped me finish mine when I started crying because I thought I was going to be in trouble with my parents. Tommy nodded, his expression growing softer. You were always worried about disappointing your mom and dad. Even when you were 8 years old, you carried the weight of the world on your shoulders. Lisa stirred her coffee, thinking about that little girl who worried too much. Some things never change, I guess. Tell me about your parents, Tommy said gently. How are they doing now? Lisa took a deep breath. This was the part she never liked talking about, but Tommy deserved to know. Dad passed away 2 years ago. The cancer finally got him, but he fought hard, Tommy. Harder than anyone expected. I'm so sorry, Lisa. Thank you. He was a good man, worked construction his whole life, never complained about anything. When he got sick, he kept saying he didn't want to be a burden on anyone. Lisa's voice got quieter, but taking care of him wasn't a burden, it was an honor. Tommy reached across the table and squeezed her hand. What about your mom? She's still with us, but she has dementia now. Some days she remembers me, some days she doesn't. I have a home health aide who comes during the day while I'm at work, but it's expensive. More expensive than I make here. Honestly, Lisa. Tommy started to say something, but she shook her head. Don't look at me like that. I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because we're friends and friends tell each other the truth. Tommy smiled. You always were the most honest person I knew. Remember in 4th grade when I broke Mrs. Patterson's flower pot with that baseball? You were so scared to tell her. But you marched me right up to her house and made me confess. You said lying would just make it worse. And I was right. She wasn't even mad. She said accidents happen, and she was proud of you for being brave. Enough to tell the truth. Then she made us help her plant new flowers, and we spent the whole afternoon learning about gardening. Lisa grinned. That's when you decided you wanted to grow vegetables in your backyard. You were convinced you were going to become a farmer. Hey, I had big plans for those tomatoes, Tommy laughed. Whatever happened to Mrs. Patterson anyway? She passed away about 5 years ago. But guess what? She left her house to her granddaughter, and now there's a beautiful garden in that same spot where we planted those flowers with her. They sat quietly for a moment, both thinking about that kind old woman who had taught them about forgiveness and second chances. Tommy, Lisa said, can I ask you something? Anything. What was it really like when your family moved away? I always wondered if you were happy about it or if you missed our neighborhood. Tommy was quiet for a long time, staring out the rain-streaked window. Honestly, I was terrified. We moved to this fancy neighborhood in California where all the kids had expensive clothes and their parents drove new cars. I felt like an alien. But it was a good opportunity for your family, right? It was. My dad got a job at a tech company, and my mom was able to go back to school. Within a few years, we were doing better financially than we ever had before. Tommy turned back to look at Lisa. But I missed you. I missed our friendship. I missed having someone who knew the real me, not the kid trying to fit in at his new school. Why didn't you ever come back to visit? We moved 2 more times before I graduated high school. Dad kept getting promoted, and we kept moving to wherever his company needed him. After a while, our old neighborhood felt like something from another lifetime. Tommy paused. But I never forgot you, Lisa. I used to wonder what happened to you, especially when I started becoming successful. I thought about hiring a private investigator to find you. Why didn't you? I was scared, he admitted. Scared that you might not want to see me. Scared that you might think I was showing off. Scared that too much time had passed. Lisa leaned forward. Tommy, you were my best friend. You could have shown up at my door covered in mud and wearing rags, and I would have been happy to see you. Even now? Even with all this? He gestured to his expensive suit. Especially now. Do you know what I see when I look at you? What? I see the boy who shared his lunch with me when I forgot mine. I see the kid who helped me study for spelling tests at the library because our houses were too noisy. I see the friend who stood up to Derek Miller when he was bullying me about my old shoes. Tommy's eyes lit up. Derek Miller, that kid was such a jerk. He was twice your size, but you didn't care. You told him if he wanted to pick on someone, he should pick on someone, his own size. Then he laughed at me because I was smaller than you, but you didn't back down. You said being small didn't mean you were weak, and being big didn't make him strong. And then you stepped right beside me and told Derek that real friends stick together no matter what. Lisa nodded. We were quite a team, weren't we? The best team, Tommy agreed. Lisa, can I tell you something? Of course. That friendship we had, those 5 years when we were inseparable, that was the happiest time of my childhood. Maybe the happiest time of my life. Period. Mine too, Lisa said softly. When I started my company, when I was working 18-hour days and living on coffee and determination, I used to think about our conversations at the library. You always believed I could do anything I set my mind to. Even when other kids made fun of my big dreams, you never did. Because your dreams weren't too big, Tommy. They were exactly the right size for someone with your heart. Tommy was quiet again, and Lisa could see him thinking hard about something. What about your dreams? He asked finally. You said you wanted to be a nurse. Is that still something you want? Lisa sighed. Sometimes I think about it. There's a community college about 20 minutes from here that has a good nursing program. I looked into it a few years ago, but between working here and taking care of Mom, there's no time. And even if there was time, I can't afford it. What if money wasn't an issue? But it is an issue, Tommy. That's reality. But what if it wasn't? Would you still want to do it? Lisa thought about it seriously. Yes, she said finally. I think I would. I like taking care of people. It's what I've been doing my whole life anyway, just not professionally. Tommy nodded like she had just confirmed something important. Lisa, do you remember what we used to say to each other when we were kids? Our promise? She smiled. That we would always be friends no matter what. That we would always look out for each other. And that if one of us ever became rich and famous, we would come back and help the other one. I remember. We were so serious about it too, like we were signing some kind of contract. What if I told you I never forgot that promise? Tommy didn't go back to his hotel that night. Instead, he spent hours walking around the neighborhood where Danny's diner sat, getting soaked in the rain but not caring one bit. He looked at the empty storefronts, the apartment buildings that needed repairs, and the people hurrying home from their jobs with their heads down against the weather. This wasn't the Portland that tourists saw. This was the Portland where real people lived and worked and struggled to make ends meet. It reminded him so much of the neighborhood where he and Lisa had grown up that it made his chest tight. The next morning, Tommy called his assistant and told her to cancel all his meetings for the week. She almost dropped the phone. Cancel everything? But sir, you have the board presentation on Thursday, and the investors from Japan are flying in specifically to meet with you. Move it all, Tommy said firmly. I have something more important to do. What Tommy did next shocked everyone who knew him. Instead of flying back to his corporate headquarters, he spent the day quietly investigating. Not like a businessman, looking for problems, but like a friend trying to understand. He sat in a coffee shop across from the diner and watched Lisa arrive for her morning shift. She was taking the bus because her car had broken down 3 weeks ago, and she couldn't afford to fix it. He saw her stop to help an elderly man who had dropped his groceries, even though she was already running late for work. Tommy talked to people in the neighborhood. He learned that Danny's Diner wasn't just a restaurant, it was the heart of the community. People came there not just for food, but because it was one of the few places where they could afford to sit down and feel normal. The owner, Danny, himself, was thinking about selling because business had been slow and the building needed expensive repairs he couldn't afford. He found out that Lisa's mother's care was costing more than Lisa made in a month. The insurance only covered part of it, and Lisa had been working extra shifts and selling things from her childhood home to make up the difference. But what really got to Tommy was learning that Lisa had been accepted to nursing school at the local community college 3 different times over the past 10 years. Each time, something had happened that forced her to defer. First, her dad's cancer, then his death and the funeral expenses, and most recently, her mother's diagnosis. She never complains, said Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who ran the corner grocery store. That girl works harder than anyone I know, and she's always got a smile for everyone. But you can see in her eyes that she's tired. Real tired. That evening, Tommy sat in his hotel room making phone calls that would change everything. His business partners thought he had lost his mind. You want to do what? David asked over the phone. Tom, I think you need to slow down and think about this. I've been thinking about it all day, Tommy said. This is exactly what we should be doing. Moving our community outreach division to Portland, creating 200 jobs in a neighborhood that most people have never heard of. Tom, this doesn't make business sense. It makes perfect sense, Tommy replied. We've been talking for months about expanding our community programs. We want to show that successful businesses can give back in meaningful ways, right? Well, here's our chance. By Thursday morning, Tommy had put together a plan that stunned everyone, including Lisa. He walked into Danny's Diner during the breakfast rush, but this time he wasn't wearing a business suit. He had on jeans and a simple sweater, and he was carrying a folder full of papers. Lisa looked up from pouring coffee and smiled. Hey, stranger, you're up early. I wanted to catch you before the morning rush ended. Can we talk? Sure, let me just finish with these customers. Tommy waited at the same corner booth where they had reconnected 2 nights earlier. When Lisa sat down across from him, he could see the curiosity in her eyes. Lisa, I want to tell you about something I'm planning to do. But first, I need you to promise me you'll hear me out completely before you say anything. She raised an eyebrow. That sounds serious. It is serious, promise me. Okay, I promise. Tommy opened the folder and pulled out a set of architectural drawings. I'm moving part of my company here. To Portland. To this neighborhood specifically. Lisa stared at the drawings. They showed the building that housed Danny's Diner, but it looked completely different. Renovated. Expanded. Beautiful. Tommy. What is this? It's a community center. The diner would stay exactly as it is, but we'd renovate the rest of the building. There would be space for job training programs, after-school tutoring for kids, senior services, and a medical clinic. Lisa's hands were shaking as she looked through the papers. This is incredible, but Tommy, I don't understand. Why here? Because this community needs it. Because places like this are where real people live and work and raise their families. Because businesses like mine should be investing in communities, not just taking from them. But the cost is not your concern. Lisa, I'm not telling you this so you'll be impressed with how much money I can spend. I'm telling you because I want you to be part of it. Lisa looked up from the drawings. Part of it how? Tommy pulled out another piece of paper. It was a job offer. I want you to run the community outreach programs, full-time with benefits and a salary that will more than cover your mother's care and leave you enough to finally go to nursing school if you want to." Lisa stared at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. "Tommy, I can't accept this." "Why not?" "Because I'm not qualified. I'm a waitress. I don't know anything about running programs or managing people or any of this." Tommy leaned forward. "Lisa, you've been managing people your whole life. You've been taking care of your parents, helping customers here at the diner, being a friend to everyone who needs one. You know this community better than anyone I could hire from outside, but remember what you said to me when we were kids? When I was scared about the spelling bee in 5th grade? Lisa smiled despite herself. "I said you already had everything you needed inside you. You just had to be brave enough to use it." "Exactly. So now I'm saying the same thing to you." Danny, the diner's owner, had been listening from behind the counter. He walked over with tears in his eyes. "Lisa, this man came to see me yesterday. He wants to buy the building, but he's going to let me keep running the diner exactly like I always have. He's going to fix everything that's broken and make sure I can afford to stay open." Lisa looked at Tommy with amazement. "You talked to Danny?" "I talked to a lot of people in the neighborhood. This isn't just about you, Lisa. This is about creating something that helps everyone." Mrs. Chen from the grocery store came bustling through the door. "Lisa, did you hear? This nice man is bringing jobs to our neighborhood. Good jobs that pay well and help people." More neighbors started coming in, word spreading fast the way it does in small communities. The diner filled up with people who wanted to see the plans and hear about what was going to happen. Tommy watched Lisa's face as she realized what was happening. This wasn't charity. This wasn't him showing off his wealth. This was him keeping a promise they had made to each other 30 years ago. "Lisa," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "I told you I never forgot our promise. If one of us became successful, we would come back and help the other. But this isn't just me helping you, this is us helping our community together." Lisa looked around the diner at all the excited faces, then back at Tommy. "When do we start?" 6 months later, Lisa stood in the renovated community center, watching a group of teenagers work on their homework at brand new computers. The space that used to be a rundown building with peeling paint and broken windows had been transformed into something magical. Danny's diner still occupied the front corner, better than ever with new equipment and fresh paint, but now it was part of something much bigger. The afternoon tutoring program was in full swing. Kids from the neighborhood came here after school instead of going home to empty houses while their parents worked late shifts. They got help with homework, hot meals, and most importantly, adults who cared about their futures. "Miss Lisa, can you help me with this math problem?" asked Kevin, a 10-year-old who reminded her so much of Tommy at that age. He was small for his size, but had dreams bigger than anyone expected. "Of course, sweetie. Let me see what you're working on." As Lisa helped Kevin with fractions, she reflected on how much had changed. Not just the building or the programs, but her own life in ways she never could have imagined. The transition hadn't been easy at first. When Tommy offered her the job running community outreach, Lisa had been terrified. She spent the first month convinced she was going to mess everything up. But Tommy had been patient with her, and more importantly, he had been right about her abilities. "You're a natural at this," he had told her during her second week after watching her organize a neighborhood meeting about the after-school programs. "You know how to listen to people and figure out what they really need." Now Lisa managed a staff of 12 people, oversaw 5 different community programs, and was halfway through her nursing degree at the community college. She attended classes in the morning and worked at the center in the afternoon and evening. For the first time in her adult life, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The medical clinic had opened 3 months ago, and it was already making a huge difference. Families who couldn't afford regular doctor visits could now get basic health care right in their own neighborhood. Mrs. Rodriguez, who used to be their 3rd-grade teacher and was now in her 70s, had been one of their first patients. "I never thought I'd see little Tommy and Lisa working together again," she had said, tears in her eyes. "You two were always meant to change the world." The job training programs were Tommy's idea, but Lisa had developed them based on what she learned talking to people in the community. They offered classes in computer skills, basic healthcare, food service, and even small business management. So far, 43 people had completed the programs, and 38 of them had found better-paying jobs. Danny was thriving too. The diner was busier than ever, serving not just regular customers but also people who worked at the community center and families who came for the various programs. He had been able to hire 3 new employees, including his daughter Maria, who had just graduated from high school. "This is the best thing that ever happened to our neighborhood," Danny told everyone who would listen. "But the best part is that it's not some outside company coming in and taking over. It's Tommy and Lisa, people who understand what we need because they lived here too." That evening, after the last program had ended and the building was quiet, Lisa sat in her office going over the monthly reports. The numbers were good, really good. Program attendance was up, job placement rates were exceeding expectations, and the community feedback surveys were overwhelmingly positive. There was a knock on her office door, and Tommy walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee from Danny's. "Working late again?" he asked, setting 1 cup on her desk. "Just finishing up the monthly report for the board meeting tomorrow. Want to see?" Tommy sat down across from her desk and looked through the papers she handed him. As he read, his face broke into that same crooked smile she remembered from childhood. "Lisa, these numbers are incredible. The literacy program has a waiting list now? 23 kids. We're going to need to hire another tutor." "Do it." "What about the senior services program?" "We're serving meals to 45 seniors, 3 times a week, and 15 of them are participating in the health monitoring program. Mrs. Chen says it's the first time in years that she's not worried about her blood pressure." Tommy shook his head in amazement. "When I first proposed this project to my board, half of them thought I was having some kind of midlife crisis. What do they think now? Now they want to replicate this model in 5 other cities. The Portland Community Center project has become the flagship program for our entire company." Lisa leaned back in her chair. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. 6 months ago I was worried about paying my electricity bill. Now I'm running programs that are changing people's lives." "You were always changing people's lives, Lisa. Now you just have better resources to do it." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, drinking their coffee and listening to the sounds of the neighborhood outside. It was the same area where they had grown up, but it felt different now, more hopeful. "Tommy," Lisa said, "can I tell you something?" "Always. I used to be angry sometimes. Not at anyone specific, just angry that life seemed so hard for people like us while other people had everything handed to them. I thought success was something that only happened to other people. What changed your mind? You did, not because you became successful, but because of what you did with that success. You could have written me a check and felt good about helping your old friend. Instead, you created something that helps hundreds of people." Tommy was quiet for a moment. "Lisa, I need to tell you something too." "What's that?" "This project, everything we've built here, it's not just about keeping a childhood promise. It's about remembering who I really am. Before I found you again, I was successful, but I wasn't happy. I had money and respect and all the things I thought I wanted, but I had lost touch with why I wanted them in the first place. And now? Now I remember. I wanted to be successful so I could help people, so I could make a difference, so I could be the kind of person who deserves a friend like you." Lisa felt tears coming to her eyes. "Tommy, you always deserved friendship. Even when we were 8 years old and you gave me half your sandwich every day because you knew I was too proud to admit I was hungry. You remember that?" "I remember everything about our friendship. The good parts and the hard parts and everything in between." Tommy reached across the desk and took her hand. "Lisa, this community center, these programs, all of it, this is what success really looks like. Not the money or the fancy offices or the business meetings. This, helping people build better lives for themselves and their families." 3 months later, the story of Tommy and Lisa had spread far beyond their neighborhood. A national news magazine had written about the Portland Community Center project, calling it a model for how businesses can create real change in communities that need it most. Other successful people started reaching out, wanting to create similar programs in their own hometowns. Tommy and Lisa found themselves traveling to different cities, sharing what they had learned about community-based development, but they always came back to Portland, to the neighborhood where they had grown up and where they were building something meaningful together. On a warm spring evening, almost a year after their reunion, Lisa and Tommy sat on a bench outside the community center, watching kids play in the small park that had been part of the renovation project. "Do you think our 8-year-old selves would believe this?" Lisa asked. Tommy laughed. "I think our 8-year-old selves would be proud of us. We kept our promise to each other and to ourselves." "What promise to ourselves?" "That we would never forget where we came from. That we would always help each other. And that we would use whatever we had, whether it was friendship or success or just a kind heart, to make the world a little bit better." Lisa smiled, watching a little girl help a younger boy tie his shoes, just like she and Tommy used to help each other all those years ago. "You know what the best part is?" she said. "What's that?" "We're not done yet. This is just the beginning."